Hi, my name is Tim Slama. I'm a mechanical engineering student at Oregon State University, and it's a well-known fact that professional athletes have shoes that are custom built for their feet. But what about us? Today, I'm going to design and manufacture a custom shoe that is built for my individual foot. Let's go! To begin, I created a sketch of what I wanted my shoe to look like. I then used the sketch to identify the different components and materials that I would need for this project. Like all shoes, I had an upper and a sole. The first step was to create a pattern. I did this by putting progressive layers of tape onto the 3D printed foot until it was entirely covered. Next, the pattern was drawn directly onto the tape. I did this first in pencil, adding eyelets for shoelaces, the overall profile, and other small details. I slowly traced the pencil and Sharpie to give myself a single line for cutting. When cutting the tape off of the mold, I was sure to cut directly down the center line of the foot. Next, I used a letter opener to press the tape onto the cardstock and remove any wrinkles that may be present. This process was again repeated for the other side to give a lateral and medial side of the pattern, and the two will be laid together at the toe seam and connected to complete a main upper pattern as shown. The created pattern was then pinned to Cordura, the fabric that I chose for my upper. This pattern was carefully cut out with scissors. To get the other foot, I flipped the pattern over and repeated the cutting process. Next, I cut out the tongue of the shoe, folding the fabric over to ensure symmetry. An identical process to this was also completed to give me a toe cap for my shoe. With cutting done, it was time to move into the next manufacturing category, joining, in the form of sewing and fusing. The process of joining first began with the basic upper panel shown here. I took this Cordura panel and ironed fusible interface onto it for strength around the lace cages. In a larger scale manufacturing environment, this could be done with a heat press and a fusible film for even more strength. Next, I pinned and used a sewing machine to join the tongue to the panel. The tongue was double stitched to ensure that it didn't come out when I pulled on it to put on the shoes. When sewing the curved region of these two stitches, it was important that I stop periodically, taking time to lift the pressure foot and pivot the fabric underneath it. This was initially something that I struggled with, but learned to do better as I progressed with sewing. As part of my redesign, I had the goal of incorporating in a waterproof protective toe cap so my feet wouldn't get wet when I was walking through early morning dew or a small puddle. This toe cap is sewed just as the tongue was. Finally, aesthetic additions were made, including film that went from the heel to the forefoot and a heel loop to help me with putting on the shoe. Finally, a piece of felt was sewed to the underside to complete the upper of the shoe. With the upper complete, it was time to focus on the sole. To make the midsole, I traced my foot profile onto a 3/4 inch MDF board from Home Depot and used a scroll saw to remove the profile. This gave me a female form in which to pour foam in. I capped the one end with a 1/4 inch board to seal the mold. Next, as my form was wood, I painted the molds with a mold release. The Flexit Foam X was then mixed in equal parts using a drill mixer, as it has a very short work time before it begins to expand. Pouring the foam equally into the two molds, I got help to quickly screw in the upper cap, which had vents for the foam to expand out of. I waited for the foam to cure for an hour before removing the foam and cutting off the excess flashing. I then placed these foam insoles directly inside the shoes. The shoes were laced, and I was ready to go for a walk. Through this pair of shoes, I learned about the challenges of sewing, mold making, and working with expanding foams. While they may not be the next Air Jordans, they're the shoe that I'm very proud of and built from the ground up.